So let's have a little bit of fun in this video. We're going to create a custom 404 page for your website with a little bit of an animated character, a star-filled background, and just learn some cool little tips. I am going to be using Core Framework to speed up my design process, but you do not need it at all. You can just simply use whatever values you want and do it in the way that you're used to. With that being said, let's take a look at how we can build something similar to this. So first things first, I've created a blank template file with Bricks Builder, and the first thing we need to do is set up the conditions for where and when this is going to be used. To do that, we simply come over to the settings section, come into the template settings, and from there choose conditions, add a new condition. From the list, we're going to select error page, and that's basically it. We'll come back to our settings, we'll come into our page settings, into general, and from there we're going to disable the header and the footer because I want to have a blank page, but you don't need to. Set our site background. I'm going to set one of our colors. Again, it doesn't really matter too much. This is a fallback if for any reason we're on an older browser and the background effect that we're going to apply doesn't show up. So just bear that in mind. This is just a fallback. Okay, so we've got the basics of our page set up. Our template is all set in place. Let's save this. Now let's go and add in a new section. Let's choose our section, come over to the options on the left-hand side and choose style. And from there, we're going to set the height of this to be 100 VH. This is now going to take up the full height of the screen no matter what size screen we're working on. Next, with the section selected still, we're going to come back into our content area and we're going to set this to be positioned in the center. So now our content will sit inside the center. We'll select our container this time, and for this example, you don't need to do this. I want to set this to be 600 pixels wide because that's basically what I'm going to do for the overall design layout for most of the site. So it's going to fit in with everything else. So with our container selected, we're going to add in a couple of blocks, and this is going to contain the image on the right-hand side and our text on the left-hand side. So with our first block selected, we're going to come over and set the width to this to be 60%. Choose our second block, width 40%. And then we're going to come back to our container, come back into content, and from there, we're going to set this to be a row. And now things will sit side by side. So there's the first things. Next up, we want to put the content into the left-hand side and the little potentially animated character on the right-hand side. Now, for the characters, I've used ChatGPT to actually create this for me. As you can see, I went through a range of different iterations. Simply wanted something that shows someone that's a little bit lost, and I kind of settled on this little spaceman. I kind of thought it was kind of cute and a little bit of fun, and the whole animated bobbin effect kind of makes sense with a little guy lost in space. All I've done then is I've downloaded this, I've stripped the background out to save it as a transparent background, and then saved it as a WebP file for maximum optimization. That being said, everything is done. So let's start by adding our little character in on the right-hand side. We'll select our right block and we'll add an image. Select our image and we'll just choose it from our library. There's our little dude. We'll insert and there's our little character. Now we'll deal with the animation in a moment. Let's select our other block and inside there we're going to add in a couple of headings. So for this example, we're going to add 3 in. Our first one is going to be our main heading. So we'll set this to be H1 and we'll just pop in oops. Then underneath, we'll set this to be H2, so semantically it makes sense. We can change the size and the style in a moment, and we'll do the exact same then for the third one. Again, set that to be H2. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the content in. So now we're going to use Core Framework to handle the sizing, the size of the colors, all those kinds of things. But again, like I say, you don't need to. You can set these to whatever values you want. So let's choose the first one, and we're going to just make sure, again, like I say, this is H1. We're going to come over into our styles, into our typography. We'll set our color. We'll set our weight, so we'll make this just a little heavier. And then we're going to choose the font size, and I'm going to use one of my variables. We'll set this to be the XL or 4XL. Same for the one below, so we're going to set the color on this. We'll set this to be the same white. We're not going to worry about the actual weight of the text. That's perfectly fine. We'll set this to be text XL. And then if we want to, we can just simply copy the style, paste the style, job done. And now what we need to do is select these and we're going to add a little bit of spacing in between. So we'll come back into our content area, adjust our row gap, and we'll set our space to something like M for medium. And that gives us nice gaps in between everything now. Final thing I want to do is just simply add in a simple list at the bottom, which will be a list of links. And you can see they're all added in. Now, I don't think I need to show you exactly how to do this. It's just a simple list, and I've set things up with an icon and then links and so on. So there's nothing particularly rocket science there, but everything is now in place. The final thing I want to do is make sure that we select our container. We're going to come into our content and we're going to make sure everything is centered so it all aligns nicely on our character. Let's save this and let's take a quick look at where we are. So you can see there's our links, our text, our little character, but we now need to handle the animation and also the star field in the background. Now to do that, all the code for this will be linked in the description down below, so you can just copy and paste this if you want to just have exactly what I've done. But first of all, let's concentrate on our little spaceman and let's make him bounce up and down a little bit on the right hand side. So select our image. We're going to give this a class. So I've already created the class, but if you haven't, simply create it. So I'm going to call this icon bounce. And if you want to use my code, you need to name this exactly the same. So we're going to call this icon bounce. Now you'll see the animation is taking effect, and that's because if we go into the CSS, there's the CSS code. But if you don't have this, which you won't, all you need to do is come into the CSS section and just paste in the little bit of code that I've supplied down below. Now, effectively, what this is doing is two things. The first is handling the actual bounce effect itself. So you can see it's using the keyframes function. It's telling us the bounce function, so it knows what to do. And then we're saying what we want to do, in this case, translate the Y to -20 pixels. And what that's going to do is it's going to create this up and down animation effect. Then the second section is telling it to bounce, take how long it takes to bounce, and also to set this to be an infinite loop and to handle an ease in and ease out animation. And that's kind of where you get this sort of slowly speeding up and slowing down effect that you have, which just makes it look a little bit more interesting and a little bit more natural. So that's how easy it is to handle the animation effect. So with that being done, the next thing you want to do is handle the background. Now to do that, all we're going to do is select our overall section. This is, again, if you remember, full width and also full height. So whatever we apply will fill out the entire background. Now there's an awful lot of code for this, so I'm simply going to just link this in the description, but it's very easy to do. All we're going to do is come into the CSS section and we're going to add in a little bit more code. And as you can see, there is an awful lot of code here. And all I've done is I've used an online generator to create this background, and then I've applied this to the actual root element, which is the section. And as you can see, this is set to be a cover, center to center with a repeat, and then the background image, which is effectively just simply using an SVG. So this is all being set up. It'll scale perfectly, no problem whatsoever. And you can use whatever kind of background generator you want to say this is an SVG and do exactly the same kind of thing. But now if we save this and then preview it, you can see now we have our little animated character. We've got our message on the left hand side, links that'll take us through to relevant pages to go back to the home page to search whatever you want to do. And we've got a little animated spaceman on a nice little space background. Bit of fun, bit of cool, but hopefully it's demonstrated a few different things that you can learn how to do when it comes to working with Bricks Builder, working with CSS, and also working with a framework like Core Frameworks. Very simple to make sure that everything looks the way that you want it to with consistency. If you enjoyed the video, all the applicable links and the code are in the description down below. As always, my name is Paul C. This is WPTuts, and until next time, take care.